Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, turns out the D.C. shooter's father was invited by the squad to the State of the Union. What was he doing there? But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
So the Republicans managed to pass the big, beautiful bill. But the question is it actually beautiful? Now, let's do a few givens for a second. The Democrats can scream and yell about this thing all they want. But if you had let those tax cuts expire, there would have been a massive economic problem, because here's what would have happened. You let the tax cuts expire, all of a sudden everybody has to pay more in taxes, which means they are holding back their money from paying for anything else, from taking vacations, from buying cars, from buying Transformers, for whatever the case may be. They are saving that money and they are not spending it because now it needs to go to the government. Do you know what the Laffer curve is? The Laffer curve is something you learn in economics, which basically demonstrates that at some point, if you tax people too much, they are going to stop giving you their money. They're not going to have any money anymore. But more importantly than that, they're not going to invest it in the economy anymore. This is a very real thing. So the big, beautiful bill, making sure those tax cuts didn't expire, that's a good thing. Making sure people aren't paying taxes on other things, that's a good thing. And you should be asking your local Democrats why they did not support this thing. Because they know that if people don't invest, that's going to tank the economy. Maybe they want the economy to tank. But here's the problem. If you're not taking in revenue, you need to offset those costs by making cuts. Now, before we dive into that, let's see exactly what was in this thing. So can't speak English. It's like a Friday thing or something. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was detailing yesterday what's in this thing as she was touting that the Republicans managed to pass it.
Last night, Republicans in the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the most significant piece of legislation in years. There were a lot of good faith negotiations in the Republican conference leading up to the final passage, but as always, President Trump came in at the end to bring all sides together and get this deal done. This One Big Beautiful Bill will implement President Trump's Make America Great Again agenda by delivering the largest tax cut in American history for middle-class families, the working class, and small businesses. The One Big Beautiful Bill fulfills President Trump's promises of no tax on tips, which was applauded today by the CEO of Uber, no tax on overtime, a Made in America auto tax break, Trump savings accounts for newborn babies, and substantial tax cuts for our amazing seniors' Social Security benefits. The One Big Beautiful Bill will permanently secure the border by delivering the largest border security investment in history, funding at least 1 million annual removals of illegal aliens to carry out the largest deportation campaign ever, finishing the Trump border wall, and giving pay raises and bonuses for our incredible ICE and Border Patrol agents. The One Big Beautiful Bill protects the Medicaid program and its benefits for the most vulnerable Americans that the program was designed for by kicking off 1.4 million illegal aliens from receiving benefits and implementing common sense work requirements for able-bodied Americans. The One Big Beautiful Bill also helps get our fiscal house in order by carrying out the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years with $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Every single Democrat in the House of Representatives who voted against all of these common sense and massively popular policies. The Democrat Party has never been more radical and out of touch with the needs of the American people. The One Big Beautiful Bill is the final missing piece toward ushering the golden age of America. The Senate should pass this as quickly as possible and send it to President Trump's desk for a final signature.
Now, she's right, but there's a bit of omission going on here. So she talks about it's the largest deficit reduction in history. She's right about that. So how much is this actually going to cut? Well, that's what's unclear. Somewhere between $700 billion and $1 trillion. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. And you and me are never going to see that kind of money in our lifetime. But the problem is that you have a $36 trillion budget deficit. So the question is, that's a drop in the bucket. That's really a drop in the bucket. And then you're up against another problem. When you cut anything, people are going to freak out because at the end of the day, they want to say they're in favor of cuts. But the second the rubber meets the road, that's when you find out how in favor of the cuts they are. For example, Senator Josh Hawley. I like Senator Josh Hawley, but he wrote this whole op-ed against the big, beautiful bill because he didn't want certain cuts. And I said, my God, did Bernie Sanders write this op-ed? Did Elizabeth Warren write this op-ed? And he's a pretty conservative member of the Senate. And I said, I predicted this. When it was first announced, all the DOJ cuts, I said, this sounds wonderful, but what happens when you hit things that are going to affect Republicans in purple districts? What happens when you start cutting things that affect Republican donors? You're going to see Republican push back. So what exactly is this thing cutting? So CNN even called out AOC for lying about this bill because the Democrats, all they've done is lie about this thing.
13.7 million Americans will be cut off from their health care and made completely uninsurable by the bill that Republicans are presenting today.
So what are the facts?
So this 13.7 million number, this 14 million number, involves some sleight of hand kind of fun with numbers from the Democrats. Again, we're talking about estimates, need to be cautious, but that number is not about this bill itself.
Yeah, it's not at all. They're making that up, but that's what they're going to run on from now until Election Day. So what does it actually do? It introduces work requirements, coverage restrictions, and other eligibility changes, such as disqualifying applicants with homes valued over $1 million. That's from Medicaid cuts. So hang on a second. You're on Medicaid and your home is worth over $1 million? Now, mind you, us in Seattle will go, well, I have a shack and that cost $1 million. But in reality, the question is, why isn't a person working? They want to get people off Medicaid because of the amount of people that are defrauding Medicaid, who should be at work right now, who are not at work, not because they have a disability or anything else, but because they're lazy. It's not talking about cutting off people who need Medicaid. It's talking about people who should not be on the welfare system. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that these changes could result in 8.6 million people not being on Medicaid by 2034. You mean more people back in the workforce who shouldn't have been on Medicaid in the first place? Yes, absolutely. Now, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Now, the bill, the big, beautiful bill, imposes stricter work requirements, extends paperwork requirements to family of school-aged children and older Americans, reduces state flexibility for waivers in areas of insufficient jobs. Approximately 3 million households could lose some SNAP benefits. What are they talking about? Once again, people who are defrauding welfare. I'm pulling this from all the liberal sources to say, what are they all mad about exactly? So you want people defrauding welfare? Is that what you want? Like, for example, why is junk food eligible for welfare? Would you like to know the only excuse I have ever heard for this? And for some reason, Democrats think this work. Well, poor people should get treats too. Do you think it's fair that a poor kid doesn't get a cookie? You know, I'm going to tell you something. There were times in my life where I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't spend the money on cookies. I spent them on sandwiches. No, the thing is that, guys, you shouldn't have all this junk food on there because then it's also going to cause health problems. So talking about the reforms to this kind of stuff is important. These are conversations we should be having. The left just wants to give out things to everybody. All right, student loan program overhaul. We're talking about maybe some billions in savings. This is all estimates, by the way, right? It doesn't actually work. And here I'm about to show you why. So this bill replaces existing student loan repayment plans with two options: a standard plan of 10 to 25 years and a less generous repayment assistance plan. It also repeals the Biden-era regulations that facilitated loan cancellation for fraud or abrupt college closures. Additional revenue comes from a tax increase on some university endowments. So, do you think it's fair that these universities have these massive endowments when they don't have to pay taxes? Or here's a better question. For example, they're getting all this federal money and not complying with federal requirements. Why should they get to do that? You know any businesses that get to do that, aside from Wall Street? No, you shouldn't get to do that at all. But in addition to that, should you have to pay back your student loans? Absolutely. So what it is hoping for is that people actually pay them back. You're expecting all this money in, but that's not necessarily going to happen. Federal employee benefits and workforce reductions. What it's basically talking about is we have a ton of employees we don't need right now. For example, the mine in Colorado, where everybody's government employment paperwork is. We do not need all those people working there because it's called a computer. You do not need all these people filing papers. Build a mainframe, import all that information, or better yet, find somebody who has some space on their own existing mainframe and put in all that information. You need an army of interns to start scanning documents is what you need to solve that. The amount of waste in our federal government, this is the kind of stuff we could be saving on. Absolutely could be. And yet the Democrats don't want to cut any of this stuff. Not at all. So, if you make these cuts, that's great. That's wonderful. Where's all this Doge stuff we talked about? I didn't see any of that in the big, beautiful bill. Did we get some of this stuff because of Doge? Absolutely. We found out the fraud in SNAP. We found out the fraud in student loans. We found out the fraud, waste, and abuse, and all these government things. But I don't see the Doge cuts here. Where are the Doge cuts? Because if you don't actually make those, all that money is going to come rushing back. Because when Congress votes to allocate money, that's a law, and it goes into effect. Why are some Republican senators having an issue with this bill? Yeah, there's some cuts in here, but nowhere near enough. And the problem is, when you have Moody's downgrading the U.S. credit rating, when you already had some of the other credit rating agencies downgrading the U.S. starting in Barack Obama's term, they know that our spending is going out of control. And you have an issue in the bond market. What are bonds? You got one for your bar mitzvah. You got one for your confirmation. You got one for a birthday. Somebody buys you a bond, and then in a few years, you get a little bit of interest. So, great. You got a $100 savings bond. In a few years, it's worth $108. Wonderful. Fantastic. That is buying the U.S. debt. You are loaning the U.S. government money, and they are promising to pay you back. If the interest rates on the debt go up, that means the U.S. is trying to incentivize you to buy their debt because they need more people buying their debt because they have more debt. And the problem is, if we keep spending and spending and spending, we're creating more and more debt. You need to spend, but you also need to make cuts. Is this a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the big, beautiful bill. I don't think the spending cuts go far enough. And I think the problem is neither Republicans nor Democrats are willing to actually have the conversation about how much spending needs to be cut in order to solve our debt problem. If you don't fix Social Security, you got a problem. Now, even though Donald Trump, because he's very good at pivoting when he sees people freaking out over some of his policies, even though he pivoted away from some of the cuts to entitlement programs, that's great, but you're just bumping this problem down the road because at some point, the amount of money you're taking in as a government is not going to be enough to cover what you have to pay. Right now, the amount of interest we're paying on our debt is absolutely insane, and that's a national security problem because of the countries that own our debt. This is a huge, huge issue. Also, how much waste is there in the healthcare system on its own? How much waste is there in all these things? For example, I'll give you this one. After Obamacare, I remember my wife going to the doctor's office, the pediatrician for our kids, and immediately they were complaining about Obamacare because now they had to file all this paperwork in triplicate, and they go, you know how many trees this is costing us? The amount of annoyance that came with that, the amount of problems that are in our healthcare system, there's a huge amount of this kind of stuff. So we're not addressing any of that. Now, I understand you can't do everything in the big, beautiful bill, even though we like to pretend that you do. But unless we make some serious cuts to entitlement programs, this ain't getting better. Now, mind you, there are some other things that are happening around here. So the Center Square has an article that says Congress also passed a measure to overturn California's phased-in 2035 ban on the sale of new gas cars. And by the way, as a person who is a new driver to EV world, thanks to my friends over at Renton, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, I love the thing. I'm a muscle car guy, and I'm telling you, I love that Jeep Wagoneer EV. It is awesome. But people should have the choice. Do you want to drive the gas guzzler? Do you want to drive the EV? You got to get the charger put on your house. There's things you got to do for the EV. They're a little bit more expensive. There's things you got to do. Do you want that thing? Do you not want that thing? And you should be able to have the choice. You're not allowed to sell these things. They're not drugs, guys, okay? It should be. You want to buy a gas-powered car? Buy a gas-powered car. You want to buy a hybrid? Buy a hybrid. You want to buy an EV? Buy an EV. But the problem is so many dumb states like Washington signed on to California's ban on the sale of new gas cars. So the vote impacts 11 other states and the District of Columbia, which make up 40% of the nation's car market and adopted California emission standards. The measure, which was passed by the Senate Thursday after its previous approval by the House, now heads to President Donald Trump's desk for his signature. But the Senate parliamentarians' objection to congressional authority to overturn the EPA waiver approving the ban could set the stage for a possible legal battle between the federal government and states that have adopted the California ban. Hey, by the way, I'm just going to point this out to you states that you don't get it, like Washington and California. If people want to buy their gas-guzzling cars and they can't buy them here in Washington, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to go to Idaho, and they're going to go to other states where they do sell these things. And then you know what's going to happen? You're not going to get their taxes, the sales tax on the cars, and that's a lot of money. You're not going to get that anymore. They're going to go buy it somewhere else. So there was this really fun fight between Lee Zeldin, who's head of the EPA, and Senator Whitehouse about the green news scam, because that's what it is. All this green technology. Right now, all these green things that we're funding all over the place. Just ask Reuben Carlisle how much of it's legit. He's profiting off it. You should ask him and other people in the Washington State Legislature or former members of the Washington State Legislature or former members of the Washington government. Where's Jay Inslee these days? He's probably sitting pretty from one of these things. So how much money did they make off the green news scam? Listen to Lee Zeldin calling out Senator Whitehouse for this.
I conducted an individual review of everything, and that concept doesn't work for you.
When did you conduct an individualized review
every
of
single
781
because
grants?
We have a zero tolerance
Will you
policy
show me
towards
your
wasting
schedule?
dollars. We inherit something. You don't care about wasting money.
Will you show me your schedule?
You don't care about wasting money, but the Trump administration does, Senator.
Will you show me your schedule?
Our schedule's publicly released. We don't put on the schedule every single moment
Will you
of
show
the
me
day
your
that
schedule
it's
to
publicly
prove
released.
your assertion that
here
you
under
did
oath,
individualized
Senator.
review of
They're
781?
under oath telling you that I was reviewing this stuff and working on it almost every single day.
And the
Why?
problem
because
with
when
that-
I was before this committee, I was asked by Senator Ricketts, if confirmed, would I immediately make this a top priority to go through all the grant funding going through EPA to make sure that we were cracking down on every waste, every aspect of abuse. Because I have to come back here in front of Senator Ricketts today. And even though you don't care about wasting tax dollars, Senator Ricketts does.
And the
I'm going to
problem-
do my job because the American public
And the
cares
problem-
about us not wasting tax dollars.
And the problem with your assertion here today is that it is belied by your own employees' sworn statements in court and by the decision of the
Senator,
Department of
you're not
Justice
grasping
to
the fact-
admit that what you
No,
say
you're
isn't
not grasping
true.
the fact that we would have multiple employees looking at these grants. That concept just escapes you like that's even a possibility.
The only
You
thing
come
about
here
that is that
and
that's
you don't
not
care
true.
about 99% of this story.
That's not.
So here's the thing. I'm going to stop their bickering right there because that's about all I can take. What's going on here is Senator Whitehouse is asking Lee Zeldin to show his work. Lee Zeldin's work is available online. Senator Whitehouse thinks he's got a gotcha moment where Lee Zeldin doesn't have it in front of him. Why? Because he said, it's all online. You can see it all right there. We're being transparent. By the way, I get the EPA press releases. It's all there. Senator Whitehouse is beating the wrong drum because most people don't know who Senator Whitehouse is. So, for example, what's going on here is that people need to realize is that they are being transparent about all the things they're cutting. So much so that I'm mad that I'm not seeing enough cuts. Is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Do we like the tax cuts, the no tax on tips, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely. This is all good stuff. But if we don't make more cuts, more significant cuts, the market's going to react the way it does, and the economy is going to react the way it does. Why is the market down today? Because they're worried if we don't make enough cuts, we're going to have to keep raising interest rates. So we're going to have to keep raising interest on bonds so that way people actually buy our debt. Because otherwise they're going to think the U.S. economy isn't stable. And that's a dangerous place to be. Me, the Jew, is even saying we might have a come to Jesus moment with the economy where we have this massive rock we're running into. This needs to be addressed. And I'm wondering why the Doge cuts are not in this bill. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Ron in Tacoma. Ron, what's up?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think America doesn't deserve health care anymore. I've been following the Democrats repairing health care back when it wasn't broken. Remember Hillary Clinton? All the way from then, all the way till now, luckily I had my health care through my employment. This year, nobody in the company but the owner and their family members that are employees have that health care anymore.
Well, because what's happening is, let's do this, Ron. Let's simplify this because I think most people aren't going to realize what you're talking about. Basically, it's not that the Democrats want everybody to have health care. They want everybody to have socialized medicine. They're trying to destroy the free market for health care, and Obamacare did that partially. And in the process, I lost my plan. I lost my doctor, as did millions of other Americans, and I had no pre-existing conditions. So as a result of that, you now had a whole bunch of people lose it because now you've got this mishmash, which is half socialized, half not socialized, and it's an absolute disaster. I don't know anybody who is happy with their health care. Either they're sort of happy with it and it's too expensive, or they're not happy with it and it's too expensive. Well done, Democrats. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, lots of developments with regards to crime here in Seattle. Looks like we've got some people in custody for some pretty awful homicides, but the question was, why were they released in the first place? Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Multiple suspects were now arrested and in custody in connection with the triple homicide outside a Pioneer Square nightclub over the weekend. According to the Seattle Police blotter, members of the SWAT team arrested men at the Joe Black Apartments. I guess they met Joe Black. Located on Gale Place South around 7 p.m. yesterday. Two of the men, ages 24 and 25, were booked into a King County jail for investigation of murder and assault. The SPD said the third suspect, a 20-year-old man, was booked for a Department of Corrections escape warrant. Whoa. Did I miss a story here, Mike? Did we know this guy was out on the loose? SPD detective confirmed to Como News that the 20-year-old man was also arrested in connection with the Pioneer Square homicides, but could not share additional information. Detectives said the 20-year-old was booked into the South Correctional Entity Jail in Des Moines. That's a SCORE jail. A search warrant was also served in an apartment unit on Thursday, and detectives recovered several guns as evidence. Wait a minute. I thought there are laws that say that convicted felons can't possess guns. How were they able to get the guns? I don't understand. Bob Ferguson and the Democrats passed all these laws. How come they didn't work? Got some more information from the King County prosecutor because they had a hearing today. The two people are Jamarquel Williams, 24, and Hakeem Dowdy. Each waived their right to appear in court and were represented by defense attorneys. In court, Senior Deputy Prosecutor Jackie Lawrence asked for each to be held on $5 million bail. That probable cause be found for 3 counts of murder in the second degree, 1 count of assault in the first degree. After hearing from both sides, the first appearance court set bail at $5 million and found probable cause for each of the alleged crimes listed above. There was also a finding of probable cause for 1 count of unlawful possession of a firearm in the first degree for Mr. Williams. So this is fascinating. Mr. Williams was previously charged by the King County Prosecuting Office on November 5th, 2024, with unlawful possession of a firearm. Dude, you could just go vote like everybody else. It was election day. Just go vote. Instead, you were messing around with crimes and guns and things like that. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and was released on a defense motion. So what's crazy is now he's got 2 cases against him. This guy was out. He never should have been out in the first place. Now, we don't know more about this escapee guy. We're waiting on more information about that, but it's a good thing these guys are behind bars until, some radical activist decides to release them. Meanwhile, according to Como News, police are investigating after a man was stabbed in the neck by an unknown attacker in West Seattle early Thursday morning. A 33-year-old victim told police he was outside looking for his dog when an unknown person stabbed him in the neck. The suspect reportedly fled the scene in an unknown direction. The man was taken to Harborview Medical Center with non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities set up containment, deployed a King County Sheriff's Office K-9 unit, but did not find the suspect. Police later located the victim's girlfriend in the area and said the woman told a different story about what happened to the man, although police did not qualify what that meant. Hang on a second here. Because when you read this, and you're probably thinking, why would Ari do this basic crime story, right? I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to do my usual thing, right? Homeless guy. Came out of nowhere. Just appeared in front of his house with a knife. Just like that Jesse Smollett guy. Those guys in the MAGA hats were waiting for. That's what I was all ready for. Until we got to that part. Wouldn't clarify what that meant. Did that mean there was a little domestic issue? And maybe dude didn't want to admit that the girlfriend stabbed him in the neck with a knife? Police won't clarify what they meant, but sounds like things ain't too hunky-dory in that house. I'm kind of curious what they mean by police won't clarify what that meant. Oh, our city. Always so much fun. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Leonard in Shoreline. Leonard, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much. You were talking about health care and, Medicaid and stuff and why Donald Trump wants to, fix Medicaid. Well, I was watching a press conference yesterday by Bob Ferguson, and he was telling me that these Medicaid cuts that Donald Trump is doing could eventually shut down hospitals, adult family homes, nursing homes, retirement homes, all that. And I thought, all of this is a great big lie. And that's what he's trying to spread.
Well, that's what he's doing, as we discussed yesterday. And actually, I ripped and clipped this and put this up on my social media channels, Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, the Hofffather over on Twitter. What was it all about yesterday? Pivot, 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 because he doesn't want to discuss the fact that he signed the largest tax increase in Washington state history. So what does he do? Trump bad, Orange man bad, Trump bad, Trump bad. Leonard, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, as predicted, the far left is defending the fatal shooter of 2 people in Washington, D.C. because they were Jewish. And we find out that the shooter's dad is friends with the squad and went to stay in the Union. What the hell is going on around here? We'll discuss when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Following the shooting of the 2 people from the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., the Jewish community is increasing security everywhere, and this is across the entire U.S., in fact, around the world, because they know that these radical socialist activists have been basically emboldened, enabled, let loose by the left and the Islamists. They've been brainwashed to go commit these terrorist acts. If they are brazen enough to do it right around the corner from the FBI's field office at a Jewish event where they know their security, then they feel like they can do this anywhere. Really, they feel like they can do this. And you know what's crazy? The left isn't apologizing for it. Yesterday, we played that clip of Ilhan Omar walking out of the Capitol. I don't want to talk about this. I'm leaving. Right? I'll be like, come on, give me a break. Insane. You may not have heard of an organization called Unity of Fields. They're formerly the Palestine Action U.S. group. They're a radical, far-left, violent, anti-Semitic direct action network. Anybody in the Pacific Northwest knows what direct action means. What does direct action means? Go attack somebody, go vandalize something, go light something on fire, go block traffic. That's who these guys are. They engage in and promote targeting of organizations and people it considers supportive of Israel. They have even encouraged bombings. They are now supporting the D.C. shooter, calling him a political prisoner and encouraging more violence. They said the people actually paying the price are Palestinians facing genocide, and Elias Rodriguez is now a political prisoner. And the people defending him the hardest, like us, are people also facing repression. Stop. This is the insanity. A guy goes and kills 2 innocent people, and now you're defending him? By the way, I wish this was a one-off. They're putting this on their social media channels. This is what they're posting today. I wish this was a one-off. It's not. It's all over the internet. You know what you need to look for? The people who have been silent this whole time, who haven't spoken out about any of this, who are Democrats, for example, or the ones who offer these garbage statements. The statement continued, the idea is absolutely absurd that PSL is a victim here and not a liberal NGO with access to hundreds of millions of dollars using their huge platforms with millions of followers to throw militants to the empire's dungeons rather than defending armed resistance. Do you see what they're mad about? They are mad that his radical socialist group is trying to distance themselves from him. They should be saying, no, you should double down. You should be encouraging more of your members to go kill Jews in the streets. It's crazy. They say condemning political violence is a counter-revolutionary position. People can post a billion Lenin quotes, but nonviolent resolution has never been a thing. And all of his criticisms were situated firmly in the context of understanding the necessity of political violence. Do you understand that the left, this is how crazy they are? They are the party of violence. It wasn't violent enough for them. Well, there were 4 people walking, and he only killed 2. Should have killed the other ones, too. In fact, there was a whole event there. You couldn't have come up with a bomb? That's how insane the left is now. And this is not one group or one organization. This is what we are hearing being chanted on college campuses. This is what we are seeing in Slack channels of major tech companies. This is what we are seeing in the halls of Congress. It has infected everything, and it's insane. You want to know how bad it is? According to Fox News, the father of the man accused of shooting 2 Israeli embassy staffers outside the Washington, D.C. Capitol Jewish Museum earlier this week attended President Donald Trump's joint address in March at the invitation of one of the squad members. So, a spokesman for Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia, Democrat from Illinois, told Fox News Eric Rodriguez was our guest during President's joint speech to Congress, but we don't know his family. Stop right there. First of all, we do background checks on people before they can get within anywhere near the president. Do you know the amount of background checks I had to go through so I could go to the White House? I didn't get my clearance until I was at SeaTac, ready to board the plane. Mike, what did I text you with, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes till my plane was about to take off? Hey, finally got my clearance, guys. I'm good to go. Also, you don't do a little bit of Googling to say, if I bring this person to the Capitol, am I going to get hit for this later if it turns out they're a really bad person? Now, mind you may think to yourselves, well, is it really the father's fault that the kid went and committed something like this? If, God forbid, it was my kid who was getting brainwashed by a college campus, you bet your ass I'm cutting off their tuition and I'm bringing that kid home. If they're hanging out with these radical people, I'm going to hire some people from one of those boot camp TV shows to go drag them to boot camp and beat the hell out of them. So, yes, you knew your kid was posting all this insanity and you did nothing about it. But they brought this guy to the State of the Union. So, I have questions about this. I want to know why you guys thought this guy was worth bringing to the State of the Union. Here's another one here. Speaking of people who are silent about this and who aren't, far-left billionaire Democratic donor Alex Soros, who's the heir to George Soros' fortune, and the Open Society Foundation, is under fire for what many are calling a performative condemnation of the recent killing of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C., despite his foundation's long history of funding radical anti-Israel organizations. In a post on X, Soros called the murderers evil in its most basic form and decried the attack as a brutal anti-Semitic act that must be condemned in the strongest terms. But critics were quick to point out what they see as glaring hypocrisy. Through his organization, he has funneled millions of dollars into organizations that smear Israel, support movements like BDS, the Boycott, Divest, Sanction movement, and promote narratives that undermine the Jewish state's right to exist. The victims, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, Israeli diplomats who were engaged to be married, were gunned down outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. The alleged shooter, Elias Rodriguez, was caught on video shouting, "Free, free Palestine," after being taken into custody. By the way, he's even doing it the way they chanted it. We played that video yesterday. Far-left radical activist. So Alex Soros writes this, and everybody went off on him because it was the Open Society Foundation and the Soroses who were funding all that stuff on college campuses. Spare me your crocodile tears right now. Dr. Sheila Nazarian wrote, "Your family supported this financially. You are evil incarnate and a traitor to your people and to this country." Eitan Fishberger said, "Alex Soros funds the revolutionary Marxist group the shooter belonged to." Kimberly Klasick said, "Really, Alex? This is insane." Because here's the thing. You're going to say, "Oh, I feel so bad." No, you don't. You're the one funding these radical leftist groups, and the inmates are running the asylum. Speaking of asylums, by the way, when we come back, there is a male in a female prison who literally went there with the intention of impregnating females. But he identifies as trans, so they're not going to kick him out. This really disgusting story is going to be censored for the children. We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. All right, we're cleaning up this story because it's a filthy story and you got kids in the back of your car. According to the Post-Millennial, a trans-identified male pedophile who was incarcerated at a women's prison in Minnesota, first problem right there, was allegedly hoarding bottles of stuff to impregnate women at the women's prison. So the dude who claims he's trans is now hoarding, as Mike calls it, gender fluid to make sure that he can impregnate women at the prison. Yeah. Sean Whitingland, 35, a biological male, was placed at the Shakopee Women's Prison due to a Minnesota state law enacted in 2023 that allows inmates to be housed in correctional facilities based on their gender identity instead of their birth sex. So he had apparently been hoarding bottles of gender fluid. I got a question. How often are you doing that to have bottles of it? But also, do you have to put that in the fridge or something? What, you just keeping that under your bunk and you think it's going to be okay? I mean, I have other questions. What, you just think you know what? I don't even want to get into the physics of this.
Room temperature.
Yeah,
Yuck.
no.
Yuck.
Gross. All gross all around. So, Wingland has been serving a 36-year prison sentence for sexually assaulting two relatives aged 6 and sharing the footage online. Well, now he's been transferred back to the men's prison. Oh, you think maybe because nobody believes you're a trans? I don't think they believed it in the first place. You're a sexual deviant. And shock, you're doing sexually deviant things in the women's prison. Jamie Ali, who is currently incarcerated at the women's prison, detailed the allegations against him to Alpha News, expressing fury that the state allowed a convicted pedophile to be housed with women. He said upon them searching his room, they found the gender fluid. He was storing it to get these people pregnant, or so that they could self-impregnate. He had been He had been charged with molesting his 6-year-old twin daughters. This is sick, beyond sick, by the way. And yet they just let this guy go in the women's prison. They're putting people at risk. Ellie, who claims she's a rape survivor, said she began to isolate from the general population due to the trans-identifying male inmates being placed in the facility. They said there's been so many nights that I don't go to meals. I stay in my rooms. Hey, what happened to all you Democrats who want everybody out of prison, except for the trans male inmates? You want them in the prisons with the women? Crazy stuff. She mentioned another trans-identifying male inmate, Bradley Cerrivo, who was among the first to transfer the facility that she regularly encounters. He now goes by the name Aurora and has been serving a life sentence for murder. He is faced in a living unit across from me, so I see him a lot, Ali said. She said he has described the things he has done with other female inmates. Because, of course, if you're going to be serving a life sentence, you want some entertainment. So now you're going to identify as female, and you're going to go there. When will people say they've had enough of this absolute insanity? Because that's what it is. I mean, there's more to this. This is one of many whistleblower testimonies over the past several years where female prisoners are speaking out against being forced to live with a biological male. A lawsuit was filed late last year against the Washington State Department of Corrections for similar matters, the expressed by Allie. Same kind of deal. In this case, the female prisoner was forced to share a cell with a 6'4" convicted male pedophile. We covered that case when it happened. This is an 80-20 issue, and yet the Democrats keep coming down on the wrong side of it all the time. Sure, let the men go in the women's prison, especially the pedophiles and the murderers. That's going to work out perfectly fine. By the way, is it Weird Sexual Deviant Day? Because the amount of stories we have for this are a little messed up. This one I got to clean up, too. This one's according to Como News. I'm changing it for the airwaves. I'm saying this out loud because the terms they use, I can't use on the air. Just going to say that, okay? A repeat sex offender who identifies himself as Master Bedroom, shall we just put it that way? Master Bedroom, that's what we're going to call him. That's actually the name he goes by. Has been arrested again.
You might even say he's a fishing enthusiast.
Yeah.
Working in the bait business.
Yes.
You might even say he's a master of it. Yes. I wouldn't, but Como News certainly did.
Yeah, they wrote in the headline for allegedly self-servicing himself inside a Seattle grocery store. What section were you in, dude? Oh, I really like the way those vegetables look. I don't know. This is just sick. According to charging documents, he continually commits these acts in public despite multiple convictions for sex crimes. I got a question. Why is he not behind bars? Why is he not in a mental institution? Why is he not somewhere else? But sure, let's just keep letting this guy do it. Hey, isn't there a park where we allow this stuff in Seattle now? Denny Park, right? Over there in Madison? Send him on over there. He'll have the time of his life. It'll be, wait, no. People want that to stop. Okay, don't send him over there. How about we institutionalize this guy instead? My God, this was the news today, people. I'm sorry. We report this stuff. It was a disgusting day.
Only solid foods for me for the rest of the weekend. No fluid, no drinks or nothing. Staying away from it.
Speaking of things we want to stay away from, Bob Ferguson wants to stay away from him signing the biggest tax increase in Washington state history, and he's getting pretty desperate to pivot. We'll give you the latest insanity when we come back. You'll listen to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 4:45, young Zach will be swinging by from the morning show for our Fake News Friday segment to put a smile on your face heading into Memorial Day weekend. And speaking of smiles on my face, you people over on the text line, for our last story, you guys didn't like my substitution or Mike's word gender fluid for the guy who was impregnating the women in prison. So you guys, on your own, we did not ask for this. We did not put out the call for this. You guys are a bunch of, well, you're funny. You're all very funny. I'm not going to call you names, but you all gave different synonyms for what we should use instead of baby batter. And, Mike, I don't know how many of these I can say on air. I mean, I'm just looking at the list. I mean, I could technically say them, right? But at some point, like, people in the car are either going to be laughing or changing the station away because they don't want to hear these synonyms anymore.
Mommy, what's yogurt?
Right? God, the turkey baster, that was one. And the baby batter. Oh, my God, people. And by the way, this isn't one person. This is all of you. How many of you today are sitting there going, hey, I think I'm going to send in synonyms to the Ari Hoffman Show? You're all funny, though.
I do like this one from Mike, though. He's the master of his domain.
Yeah. Oh, exactly right. Oh, you people are funny. You people are funny. That's okay. I needed this today. You know why? Because there's some serious stuff to talk. All right, it's very hard to transition from one to the other. All right, let's do some true crime around here, shall we? So today, we had a big trial begin out in Snohomish County. And this is the one involving the illegal immigrant, Raul Benitez Santana, who allegedly, and I can't believe I still have to use the word allegedly, but he hasn't been convicted of it yet, allegedly killed Washington State Trooper Christopher Gadd. Now, let's go over the facts of the case in case you don't remember them. Raul Benitez Santana was driving under the influence of both alcohol and marijuana, I believe, at over 100 miles an hour in the middle of the night on I-5, swerving through traffic. He's an illegal immigrant with a very long criminal history who should never have been in this country if it wasn't for Jay Inslee and Turd Ferguson. He should never have been here. But they made us a sanctuary state literally 2 days before he got convicted, which means that once he was convicted, they couldn't kick him out. This death is on Jay Inslee. This death is on Bob Ferguson. This death is, of course, on the guy who was driving the vehicle. So now that you have all that information of this guy, it was opening statements today in the trial, just like you see in Law and Order. It's opening statements. Now, I want to preface this by saying a few things. Number one, why the hell didn't you plea bargain this guy? Is it they didn't offer you a deal because it's a cop? I don't know. Did they offer a deal? But usually get offered some kind of deal. Hey, if he pleads guilty, we're just going to max him out at this number and he's going to stay. There's no death penalty, so that's off the table. But any attorney would have looked at a plea deal, or did he refuse to plead? I have a different theory on what's going on here. With all the defense that his public defenders have come up with, I wonder if they thought because he's an illegal immigrant, they could get him off the hook completely. Completely. Because it's Washington State. And they already lowered the bail once before for this alleged cop killer, so maybe they would just let him off entirely. Maybe. I wonder if the hubris of assuming Washington is so far gone liberal actually influenced the public defenders in not even getting the guy a plea deal and going, no, let's go to trial. We'll take our chances with a jury and a judge because it's Washington State and they keep voting for stupid. Let's give it a go here. So I want you to listen to the public defender's opening arguments. You are going to want to throw something at your radio. You are going to want to change the channel. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But I want you to remember everybody's entitled to a defense, no matter how awful they are. I think these happen to be bad lawyers, but you're entitled to a defense, and with public defenders, you get what you pay for. They are free. Everybody's entitled to a defense, no matter how awful you are. But the route she is taking is an interesting one, I'm just going to say, because I did one semester of pre-law classes because I thought it'd be fun. And then I realized law is not for me. I got an A, by the way, which is rare for me, because I never studied or did anything, but that was a pretty easy class for me. But I look at this and I said, this is the defense you went with?
In the dark, early morning hours of May 2nd, 2024, a series of unfortunate circumstances collided in one of the darkest stretches of I-5. And that coming together of these unfortunate circumstances led to a tragic accident. We had a blacked out SUV parked on the side of the road, giving no warning to any other driver on the road that night of its presence. We had a black SUV traveling above the posted speed limit, and we had a white van being driven by a sleep-deprived and inexperienced driver who forgot to turn on his headlights. And when these three circumstances collided, not only did it result in a catastrophic accident, it resulted in the tragic death of Trooper Gadd, but it is not a crime. Not all car accidents are crimes.
Okay, crazy lady. Let's just stop right there. What's the defense you could have gone with for a second here? You could have said, police improperly collected this, maybe that. Instead, you're going with the, it's not a crime. It is a crime to speed. I do it all the time. I'm sure a lot of you out there do too. It's still a crime. You just admitted that he committed a crime. You're not very good at this. You admitted he was speeding. You just said, if you find fault at all, at the minimum, you have just admitted that your client committed a crime. You suck at this. That's number one. Now what you're saying is that, and she went on to victim blame. We'll get to that in a second. So what you're saying is that there was an inexperienced driver who was exhausted driving a white van who forgot to put on their taillights or their headlights, which means you turn on your taillights. A few years ago, I was driving my Charger. And I'm driving my Charger, and what happens? It's a black Charger. Very, very black Charger. Still got running lights on it. I don't know if this van had running lights or not. But I'm driving, and there's one of those merges, not on a freeway. It's on a city street where somebody comes in. It's not one of those turns where you turn onto a street. It's one of those cuts where you merge onto a street. One of those. And as I'm driving, all of a sudden, a car hits me in the quarter panel. And I got really mad. And I said, whoa, what, you didn't see me? Do you know what this woman told the police when they showed up for the accident? By the way, you know how long ago this was because the police showed up for an accident. Do you want to know what she told the police? I couldn't see his car because it was black. First of all, wasn't that dark out. Second of all, it's got running lights on it. Third of all, were you not paying attention? Here's something. If you're driving 100 miles an hour on a freeway, you're not going to have the reaction time. Mike, what's the speed limit up near Marysville? I want to say 70, but I know somewhere up there it drops down to 60.
Yeah, it kind of comes and goes. Like, once you clear Everett, it goes back up to 70 through Marysville, like Arlington, Smoky Point. But, like, once you start getting towards Mount Vernon, it drops back down to 60.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, it kind of goes up, down, up,
Let's
down.
give the benefit of the doubt that the speed limit's 70. Let's say
Sure.
that even though I think over there it's 60, but okay, let's say it's 70.
Right. Even then, 70 is a far cry from 100.
Right. You're 30 miles over the speed limit. You have already convicted your client in your opening. Have you never watched Law and Order, lady? Have you never looked at it at all? Immediately, you admitted he did something. If you're going to do that, you should have pled it out. You already said his speeding was a contributing factor to this. How dumb can you be? That's what you went with? That's what you did.
I think she saw the wrong episodes of Law and Order because, like, I even like listening to the clip again, I'm just stricken by like the storytelling aspect. She's like, the darkest night.
Yes.
It's like I don't know what she's trying to accomplish through that tone of voice, through that phrasing. Are you trying to garner sympathy? Because, sorry, I got none.
Right, exactly.
It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.
Right. You know what? Tell that to his widow. Tell that to his 2-year-old daughter who never knew her father because your client killed him. Okay. So this is the direction you're going in. Mike, she's doing a thing they teach you in speech classes. I assume she had to take one. Here's what she's doing. And it was sad. And it was terrible. But I'm trying to paint a picture for you. Now, Mike, you listen to the show every single day for 3 hours a day. You have to. You're pushing buttons in there. You know what I do. I modulate my voice. I get really, really loud. I get really, really quiet, depending on what I'm talking about. I'm just better at it than she is. So, what's she doing? She's trying to get sympathy from the jury. You just admitted that your client did it. At the very minimum, anybody's going to say the dummy head was driving at 100 miles an hour. That's not in question. Not in question. Now, you want to argue how the police collected the drunk high stuff? Fine. But at the same time, you just admitted that your client was driving at least 30 miles over the speed. Oh, he was going above the speed limit. This wasn't 5 miles over. This wasn't 10 miles over. Your client was going over 100 miles an hour, which, by the way, in itself is a felony because it's dangerous. We all talk about, what's the top speed you've ever gotten your car to or whatever it is. We know it's dangerous, though. We don't do it on a regular basis. Even I don't do that, and I drive like a maniac.
Well, here's the other distinction as well. It's like having been stopped for perhaps going too fast in my misbegotten youth. There is a difference between a speeding ticket and reckless driving.
Yes.
And if you're caught doing 100 through Mount Vernon, Burlington, Smoky Point, whatever, that's reckless driving. That's not just speeding.
Exactly. So here's something else. You're admitting he was driving the vehicle. Wait a minute. Well, there's only 3 vehicles involved in this mess. You just admitted he's at the scene. You just put your client at the scene. My God, do I have to do your job for you, woman? This is insane. This is absolutely crazy. You've now put him in the vehicle and already breaking the law. Well, I guess free public defenders, you get what you pay for. But here's something else. Did he have a valid driver's license? Now, it's Washington State. But this guy had multiple moving violations, and I have to go back and double-check the case history. But I'm pretty sure his license had been suspended on numerous occasions and taken away on other ones. I have to double-check that. Don't quote me on that. But now, if that's true, you've now admitted that he did something else. How many you've just confessed that he did everything right then and there.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Exactly. Well done. Well, you know what? Doing great. You're making it easy for the jury. You've just shown everything your client did. You put him at the scene. You put him in the car. You said he was speeding. You did this. At the end of the day, he never should have been in the country. Oh, wait a minute. What did she also just show? That her illegal immigrant client was in the U.S. also. So now you're showing that a guy with a criminal track record was now breaking another law by being in the U.S. I understand you're dealt a bad hand with the case you have to do here. But my God, this is the direction you're going in? I did not clip the audio of her victim blaming Trooper Gadd. She was talking about how this wasn't his usual routine. He's not usually there. He's usually somewhere else. But did you hear what she said at the beginning of this? A blacked out SUV. You mean an undercover patrol vehicle, which all look the same? Hey, you know what? If your idiot client hadn't been driving on the shoulder, which, by the way, she hasn't addressed that yet, driving on the shoulder. Mike, I've been on a lot of dark highways. What do you do when you're on a dark highway and there's no streetlights? What do you do, Mike?
Yeah, take it a little slower for first.
That's
We'll
first.
start with that.
You know the second thing you do? It requires moving your finger a quarter of an inch. You turn on your brights. And guess what? Amazingly, you can see better. Mike, have you ever been speeding a little bit too much and somehow ended up in the shoulder? Have you ever been over there driving on the shoulder because you're speeding too much?
Most definitely. Most certainly. Those many a turtle gave their life so that I could stay on the
I will
narrow.
tell you, the only time I have ever done something like that is that I didn't realize traffic had come to a stop up ahead of me. And to avoid crashing into a car because I was speeding, I veered over. Oh, wait a minute. Did she just demonstrate that he was speeding again? And to avoid crashing, he went somewhere he shouldn't have been and veered over there? Here's another thing. I got another question for you. Mike, I assume you've driven very late at night before.
Oh,
right?
yeah, very much so.
Very much so. Okay, you're also here late at night. What do you notice between my commute and your commute? So I leave here around between 6:15 and 6:30 every single day, right? Somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
You leave way later than that. But if you were to leave at 5 o'clock, what would traffic look like?
Oh, it would be pretty thick.
Okay.
In fact, honestly, that's kind of why I stay late sometimes because, I mean, we're right next to the climate pledge and concert goers and hockey people and all those knuckleheads. I just try to wait them out. I've always got work to do. But yeah, no, traffic is thick. In fact, you drove me to Lumen Field to go see the Rolling Stones. Yeah. And it was like a 7 o'clock show. And it's like, oh my gosh, the tunnel is packed because people drive at those crazy times. That's why I usually leave around 7, 8 o'clock, that kind of thing.
See,
a lot of people around.
At late at night, there's less people.
Yes.
So at 2, 3 in the morning, how many vehicles do you think were on I-5 in Marysville? Oh, a truck, a van, and a state trooper looking for idiots who are speeding.
There it is. Yeah.
And now you're admitting he was going 100 miles an hour because there's nobody on the road. He thought he had the reaction time. He wasn't looking. He was drunk. He was high. All of that. You've just cooked your client, which I'm glad about, by the way. Too bad we don't actually cook them here because that would be way better. But at the same time, the demonization she did of Trooper Gadd for he shouldn't have been there. He's a cop. He's in a speed trap. Where should he have been?
He's a state patrol.
Exactly.
It's the freeway.
That's what they do.
It's literally their jurisdiction.
That's what they do. I know that we've law and ordered this to death, but what other dumb things are we going to... You know, I want to say, hang on, before anything else, I want to say thank you to Como News for being in the courtroom. Thank you to Como News for being there. Jeremy Harris has been on top of this from the beginning. Thank him for bringing a camera crew out there to be there for this and covering this, because they're the ones who got this footage for us. And I'm sitting there incredulous. Normally I don't watch these things because trials are not like Law and Order. They are boring as sin. But I saw Jeremy Harris was sharing the live stream, and I said, let me check in. And I caught the tail end of this, and I go, hang on. Let's go back in the live stream. My God. This is the best you got? I shouldn't be mad about it. Good. The guy's going to serve life in jail or whatever it is.
Also, to go back to some of our speed limit legislation.
Yes.
Like I haven't lived in the North End for a long time, and zones have changed. But KVI audience, the Big Mike militia, they're out in force. So I got a number of different texts, but the consensus is like it was a 60-mile-an-hour zone where that incident occurred. Speed limit goes to 60 at Smoky Point, so it was 40 miles an hour over. Speed limit is 60 until after the Arlington Island Crossing exit. Speed limit is 60 miles an hour until you pass the Smoky Point exit, and then it goes to 70 at the rest area north of Arlington. So, again, no matter how you slice it, it was a 60-mile-an-hour zone, 40 miles an hour over.
I'm pretty sure I've gotten caught in that zone doing 70 because it went down to 60. In fact, I know I did. You know when I did? I know when I did this. So do you remember, what was it, like a couple of years ago? My son was coming back from Israel, and there was all that screwy business with his flight. He got stranded in Vancouver, and I had to go get him. So it's 9 o'clock at night. I find out I have to go get my son in Vancouver, and I'm working the next day. Mike saw me. I was in rough shape.
I remember
the next
this.
day.
Yeah.
So I get in my Challenger, which I was driving at the time. I get in the Challenger, and my niece and nephew want to come with me, right? So now I've got a whole welcoming party for my son. We are booking it up to Canada. I got half an hour of sleep in a parking lot at the airport while waiting for him to land, right? We book it all the way up there. We're coming back. I must have been doing insane speeds because I'm exhausted. I should not have been doing this at all. And I got busted for doing a 70 in a 60 right over there. That's where I got pulled over early in the morning when there were no cars on the road. And what I really wanted to say to Stady, was, good thing you didn't catch me like 3 miles beforehand, because I know how fast you could be going over there. I will say this one. And actually, Paul, who from Granite Falls put this one up here. This was actually a good point. Talking about the defense attorney. Ari, maybe she has a soul and wants him to go to jail. You know what, Paul? That's something I hadn't thought of. Give benefit of the doubt. Maybe she does. Maybe she knows she's got a loser here and just wants him in there. Now, that wouldn't be good on his behalf because in this system, we really do want you to get the best defense possible. We really do. But in this case, we really want this guy to go to jail for the rest of his life. We want him to get the chair. There's no reason he should have a life when Trooper Gadd doesn't get to have one with his family. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. A crazy activist judge is once again trying to set law for the entire state, trying to stop Donald Trump from cutting off foreign students going to Harvard. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. So last weekend, I had the privilege of having Shabbos Kestenbaum in my house. So Shabbos Kestenbaum was over at my house. He's the kid who sued Harvard for all the discrimination on campus. And what was interesting about having him in my house was I got to hear firsthand how bad it was at Harvard. Now, why was he at my house? We bring out scholars and residents all the time to talk to the synagogue and talk to the community. And people really wanted to hear this kid talk. And I thought he was amazing, unbelievable. Does the name sound familiar to you? He's the kid who spoke at the RNC. We actually had him on the show. When I was at the RNC, we had him on the show a couple times before then. Really articulate kid talking about how bad the anti-Semitism is at Harvard. And now, right before he was at my house, he settled with Harvard. He settled with Harvard, and we don't know the amount. We don't know the terms. We don't know if there was an amount. What we do know is the settlement was made a week ago today, so literally last Friday. And what happens is, in this settlement, when he was asked about it, do you know what he said? Because people said, why didn't you keep up the fight? Why didn't you go with discovery? Why didn't you do anything else? You know what the kid said? He said, the Trump administration is doing more than I ever could to punish Harvard and to fix Harvard. And he's 100% right. Now, when the Trump administration says no more foreign students at Harvard, what they're really saying is, we want you to comply with the laws that you have to follow. For example, you are under Chinese communist influence at Harvard. You are allowing terrorists on campus. Why is it, and I've said this before on the show, why is it every time there's some leader of a terrorist organization who's assassinated, it's always like, he studied at Harvard, he studied at Yale, he studied at Oxford. Why is that? The federal government is saying, we want to know who these students are. We want to know what their background is. We want to know what they're studying. That's what they're asking for. And you know what? That's not unreasonable to know this kind of stuff. Now, Shabbos Kastenbaum would have been doing the media tour yesterday with all this going on. But he just donated a kidney. So he couldn't do the media tour. But he did post a video of his take on all this from his hospital room. Kids there all gowned up. It looks like it's post-surgery. He seems a little groggy, right? His hair's a little tousled. He's usually more coiffed than this. So I assume it's post-surgery from donating a kidney because he's a good kid, right? So here's what he said about this whole situation.
Hi, everyone. I'm still recovering from the kidney donation yesterday, and I've been asked to do some media hits today, which of course I can't as I'm in the hospital. So instead I wanted to make this quick video. 3 weeks ago, the Department of Homeland Security asked Harvard to follow its mandates under federal law and to provide information on their international students on foreign visas who are engaged in illegal activities, to provide insight as to the funding they receive from the Chinese Communist Party, as well as potential allegations that they have resources and programs with the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Rather than respond to those accusations and allegations leveled by the Department of Homeland Security, Harvard University said, we're not going to respond to you, and we're certainly not going to cooperate with you. And the Department of Homeland Security said, well, if you're not going to cooperate with us, and if you're not going to fulfill your mandates under federal law and tell us who these international students are, well, then we're not going to allow you to bring international students into your campus at all. Now, I've said from day one, don't tell Israel not to bomb Hamas. Tell Hamas to surrender and release the hostages. So, too, don't tell the Trump administration not to punish Harvard. Tell Harvard to stop discriminating. The pressure needs to be on the perpetrator of the crime and not on the victim who's responding. If you believe that international students should be at Harvard University, then you should be really upset at Harvard University for refusing to cooperate with the federal government. Harvard has been trying to have its cake and eat it too for years. They want full funding from the American taxpayer while also accepting 30% of their students from overseas. They want to discriminate and violate Title VI of the Civil Rights Act while also receiving federal contracts. It doesn't work that way. Harvard is an institution that receives openly and willingly billions of dollars every single year. And if they want that money, then they have to comply with federal law. If they don't want the money, then that's fine. Then they don't have to. The problem is they do want the money. So don't be upset at the Trump administration. Be upset at Harvard for not cooperating and getting us into this mess.
He's exactly right. That's exactly the point. So Harvard puts up this post yesterday. They put up a whole letter. But what does the post say? Without its international students, Harvard is not Harvard. They were ratioed hard for this. One of the comments actually made it to Not the Bee, which is the real news version of Babylon Bee, which is news so insane you would believe it's fake, but it's actually not fake. They wrote this up, and they added my comment to it. Mike, who was it on the text line that found this for us? Because I didn't even know this was Dave. Dave on the text line just sent this on over to us. Because I wrote, when they wrote, without its international students, Harvard is not Harvard, I wrote, wish you felt that way about your Jewish students. Right? Right there. Boom shakalaka. President Trump was actually addressing this in the Oval Office.
Are you considering stopping other universities besides Harvard from accepting foreign
Well, we're
students?
taking a look at a lot of things. And as you know, billions of dollars has been paid to Harvard. How ridiculous is that? Billions. And they have $52 billion as an endowment. They have $52 billion. And this country is paying billions and billions of dollars and then gives student loans and they have to pay back the loans. So Harvard's going to have to change its ways.
He's right. And here's something else. Harvard filed a case, and almost instantly, a judge ruled on the case. The Obama appointee ruled and blocked Trump from going forward with this. But here's the thing, guys. What did the Trump administration do wrong? They said, we want this information. It's not unjust to ask for the information. Harvard refused to comply with that. And some judge goes, I'm going to back Harvard in this. The federal government, if you want federal funds, do what they tell you to do. If you want to have foreign students come in, then follow immigration law. Oh, there we are. Right. You don't think we should have borders. You don't think we should have immigration laws. You don't think we should have any laws. See, this is the kind of thing I think the Supreme Court is going to shoot this down and actually allow Donald Trump to say, yeah, all you have to do is comply with federal law, the rules and restrictions that are already there. We're not asking you to do anything new. We just want you to report on who these people are so we know who's in our country. Enough of this stupidity. Plus, they're the ones who are working for the Chinese Communist government or whatever, or other terrorist organizations. It's all been well documented. Insane. When we come back, by the way, a new subcommittee in the Senate is investigating the clot shot. Chairman of the committee, Senator Johnson, will be swinging by. Tell us what they found so far. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you missed any part of the show, you can always download the podcast. Subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Also, just a reminder that coming up at 5:45 is your chance to win fantabulous prizes and your last chance to win count them, 2 tickets to see The Who. That's right. So, another reason I always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI, left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com and download the KVI app. Now, a lot of you have said we want an investigation into the clot shot. A lot of you have said we want to make sure that we find out who's responsible for mandating these things, and now there's actually a Senate subcommittee that has been tasked with doing so. Joining us now is the chairman of that committee, Senator Ron Johnson. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, Ari, thanks for having me on. Hope you're doing well.
Such a pleasure. So why don't you tell us what you're trying to find out with this subcommittee?
Well, first of all, it's been obvious to me, and I think anybody that has eyes and a little bit of curiosity, that we very early on, after the introduction of the COVID injections, that there were some safety signals. There were injuries, there were deaths. I started tracking VAERS pretty early on, where there are a couple thousand deaths. Again, these are being administered to the elderly. So at that time, with a few thousand deaths, 46% were occurring on the day of vaccination or within 2 days. Fast forward to now, we've had over 38,000 deaths. 24% of those have occurred on the day of vaccination or within 1 or 2 days. Now, I know VAERS doesn't prove causation, but that's pretty serious correlation. And the other thing we know about VAERS is it dramatically understates the number of adverse events. So I've known for a long time these COVID injection injuries are real. I've met the people. But they've been ignored, they've been gaslit, they've been vilified. And so what we've done now, and this is kind of based on the work of Naomi Wolf and Amy Kelly and a bunch of other reporters who did FOIA requests and started getting information, but all the documents they got were heavily redacted. So we got the documents based on what they had already extracted that we knew existed, unredacted. And now it's obvious that the government knew, because Israel in late February 2021 asked about the large number of cases of myocarditis in particularly young men in Israel. What were we seeing? So this is end of February. The Department of Defense, we're seeing it as well. And they're saying, but if you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it. So it all comes down to about May timeframe, where now they're internally admitting that they have a safety signal on myocarditis. I mean, we've got that document. Do we have a safety signal? Yes. But at the same time, they didn't issue a warning on the Health Alert Network so that doctors were aware. So if they had a case of myocarditis, they could ask, well, when did you get an injection? So again, basically hiding it. They wouldn't even, when they didn't do the HAN, they did a lesser notification. They didn't even advise the doctors. They were going to recommend those individuals with myocarditis shouldn't engage in heavy physical activity. They left that warning out as well. So again, they were downplaying, they were hiding the risk of myocarditis because they wanted to get it approved for young people, for infants who had virtually no risk from COVID. This was all about making sure nobody was concerned about the vaccine, no vaccine hesitancy, so they could issue mandates, which they did later in the year. They mandated it. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to be, I think, uncovering. We already have indications, just not ready to issue the reports on other cover-ups in a far more serious fashion.
Senator, the things we found here in Washington State from their health departments through public disclosure requests reveal that they knew there were these problems and yet pushed forward with the mandates anyway. And I take it from the opposite approach. I had a friend who was convinced this was going to help them and keep them safe and stop the spread. And they died because they traveled after getting the vaccine. So they were lied to all over the place. Is that something that's going to be investigated, is the lies and the mandates?
Yes. I mean, and let's face it, let's start with the lies on the injection. They said it was going to stay in our arm. They knew it wouldn't. It was encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle, which has its own toxicity, but that lipid nanoparticle is designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers, like the blood-brain, like the placental. It's going to absolutely escape from the deltoid muscle. And they also had biodistribution studies in rats. That was revealed by Japanese regulators, biodistributed all over the body, and end up being stuck in the adrenal glands and accumulating in the ovaries, that type of thing. It's all over the body. And of course, the mRNA, what it does is it enters the cell, it hijacks the cell to have the cell produce the spike protein, which is toxic to the body. The body's reaction, it destroys something that's not it, that is toxic to itself. So that's what inflammation is. Myocarditis is inflammation in the heart. So the reason you have such a broad a breadth of different types of adverse events is because this toxin is being produced all over the body, because they had no idea where this is going to be biodistributed. They had no idea. It's being circulated in the body for months and years. They lied to us repeatedly. So yeah, we have to uncover and expose these lies, and that's the first step, exposure.
Senator, just before we let you go in the last few minutes we have with you, something that really bothers me is the mandates. I had Dr. Robert Malone on my show. YouTube took down the interview with him. Facebook took down the interview with him. He's one of the architects of the mRNA vaccine. They didn't want to hear what he had to say. And then you had all these elected officials like Governor Jay Inslee here in Washington and others, all these Democrats across the country, pushing the narrative that take the shot or you're fired. Is anything going to be done in that regard with your subcommittee?
Well, again, you want to expose it, but here's the problem is none of those people will ever admit they were wrong. They don't want to admit what they pushed or mandated on people caused them irreparable and permanent harm or killed them. Okay, so that's what we're up against. We're up against the entire COVID cartel, all the officials during the Biden administration, the pharmaceutical companies, the social media companies, the media. I mean, that's the COVID cartel. And they all pushed it. And none of them will ever admit they're wrong. So we're up against powerful influences, and we also have that basic human tendency to never admit you're wrong.
Senator Johnson, thank you so much for your hard work on behalf of all of us, and thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You as well.
Lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, my friends, Fake News Friday. Put a smile on your face heading into the weekend. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Can rely on.
It's called Fake News.
With Young Zach.
Educate yourself, you fool.
On the Ari Hoffman Show. Talk Radio 570 KVI.
You probably already have a smile on your face heading into a long weekend, but we're here to add a little humor to it. Young Zach, what do you got for us?
I have a fun song.
I'm a little worried. It's a little too clubby.
Well, I had to appeal to the youth.
I see. The Utes.
Turd Ferguson sitting high in Olympia's tower. Promised us a break, but he's draining our power.
Turd Ferguson.
Taxes keep rising, our budgets feel the strain. While he's spinning stories about the progress we'll gain.
Yeah!
Millions in the red, and we're stuck with the tab. Turd's got his dreams, but they're making us crab. Singing, oh Lord, teach that turd.
Oh, you gotta give him that pop.
But I'll flip the bird to the turd king of the
That was fun. Bouncy number for a Friday.
Love it. Feel like we're going to head out to the club. Yeah, I want to hear that in the clubs.
Yes.
In the club. Oh, very good, Zach. We're not talking about that dude today.
I know, but
are
we're
we?
talking about club. We're talking about club anthems. I just thought it was
Very nice,
Oh,
Zach.
man.
Ain't no
Very
party
good.
rock, but I'll take it. Flush that turd. Very good, Zach.
it's a deech that turd. Apparently, AI's not great. AI's not perfect, but it'll do.
Yeah. What else you got for us,
We'll
Zach?
start with some Babylon Bee. Trump insists the next Chinese pandemic must be made here in America.
Well, technically, it wasn't the last one. Didn't we give him the money for it? Okay.
I mean, we give the Chinese the money to make our goods anyway.
That's
I
fair.
don't
That's
think-
fair. Yes.
I don't think you get to claim that your headphones over there are made in
That's a very
America
fair point.
because you
Very
gave
fair
the
point.
Chinese money to make them.
What else you got, Zach?
Colorado Rockies lose to Savannah Bananas 57-0.
There's no gravity up there. Very good.
A bunch of space people just floating around in space.
Huh?
In Colorado.
Oh, I was like, I think you're woefully misinformed as to what the Savannah Bananas do.
Yes. What do the Savannah Bananas do? I am uninformed. What is this? I don't even know what this is.
Sorry.
Good. I would like to hear you explain this to
Well,
him.
I kind of know it's the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, but they
Exactly.
don't really
Okay.
come here. I think
Yeah.
it's more of a for
It's
the
more of an
first
East
time
Coast
ever
kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
we have an East Coast. But
exactly.
Is that kind of the
That's
Harlem
about it.
Globetrotters of baseball?
I'd say that's what it is.
But they play like your local team, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't
Okay.
have an arch enemy they travel
No, it's
with.
like when the Harlem Globetrotters would come and play the camp staff at my camp kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It's sort of
God,
that kind of
okay.
deal.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
they-
you.
they-
Thank you. I literally had no idea. I think we're all learning something.
They
new today.
destroyed my camp staff. It was really fun to watch. Yeah, I was entertained.
Why?
Well, because
Headline: local camp staff
loses.
destroyed.
Well, it's funny because the guys always go, "Yeah, I was the best basketball player when I was 12 or 18 or whatever," and then they're playing the Harlem Globetrotters.
Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know.
Yes. That. What else you got, Zach?
Got death apparently. My God. Horrible
man.
death.
Speaking of South Africa,
Free South Africa, you dumb SOB.
Don't be drinking water when we're doing this segment. Note to self for
bad
later.
idea.
Okay.
that's where that soundbite's from. That's from him meeting with the South African president, which the Hard Times is reporting shocked President Trump could have sworn the South African president was in prison.
Oh, no.
They freed him already.
Yeah, I teed that up just for
Thank you. Thank you.
It's the least I could do. Back to
Different guy.
Back to the Babylon Bee. This won't save our reputation either. Chicago mayor insists he has never discriminated against a white boy honky cracker.
Oh, very good. Very good. You can send your angry emails to Zach.
Obama!
at KVI. Very good.
Finger slip. Don't know why I hit that.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Very good.
This one's fine. The Onion, new FEMA alert notifies the public whenever Twister is airing on TNT.
Nice.
Very
I
good.
suppose USA Today, perhaps?
Sure.
An Epics, like a tertiary Epics channel?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Stars 3.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, man. Anyway, a lot from the Hard Times this week. Harvard asking around to see if anybody knows any good lawyers.
Oh, that's a deep burn.
I know a guy who went to Yale Law School. He's a little busy being the vice president.
Very true. Very true.
It was J.D. Vance. I thought that was fun.
I like that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, more from the Hard Times. Urinal cake signals the beginning of punk venue gentrification.
Yep.
I don't understand any of that.
Well, so a urinal cake
Yeah.
goes in the urinal. You don't understand what a urinal cake is?
A urinal. I'm like, what's a urinal cake? I'm trying to figure out what a
jeez.
urinal cake is.
Well, see,
okay.
See, the Savannah Bananas are a team that play another team. They're like the Harlem Globetrotters. Now, are the Bananas, are they themselves the Globetrotters, or are they more the Washington Generals? I'm still a little unclear.
The Bananas are good.
Okay, all right.
The Bananas are a near professional team that goes and beats your local team. But back to the
got it.
I'm like, what's a urinal cake?
urinal cake.
Delicious.
A urinal cake.
Try
I
some.
do have a fun urinal cake story.
Okay.
I enjoy the smell.
of a fresh.
Okay.
Well, think about it. It's like
the post-bar smell. Like, take that sucker out.
Fresh, right
Fresh
out of the
urinal
package.
Cake. Okay.
Untouched by human.
Have you changed a lot of urinal cakes in your day?
No. But I've been to a fair amount of cash and carry.
Yes.
So I convinced my brother when he started driving his 1990 Jeep Cherokee in high school. I was like, it would be great if the whole car, if you could just use a urinal cake as an air freshener.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we bought one, and they're incredibly affordable. I don't know if anybody's ever dreamt of owning a urinal cake. I'm here to tell you, you can achieve that dream. They're about $2. And we bought one with a little clip on it, so he hung it from his rear view mirror, and it smelled exactly like a fresh urinal cake, which was wonderful. The problem that I didn't know was that a urinal cake doesn't necessarily dissolve with the addition of liquid. It kind of evaporates that block of
sure.
And so when it evaporates, it doesn't, I don't know if you remember 5th grade science, but that matter doesn't disappear. It's still in there. So it impregnated every piece of cloth. He walked around school with his backpack, his clothes, his book, everything in that car that ever went in that car, and probably to the current owner, who anything that will ever go in that car reeks of fresh urinal cake.
Minty fresh.
Yes.
My goodness.
Not mint. It's more of a. It's the best way to describe it for those unfamiliar with the scent is like that pink ivory hand soap that you get at a good restaurant.
Yeah.
That's the smell.
I gotcha.
Got it. I love it.
Yes.
Anyway,
been swimming in raw sewage. I love it.
Don't hang a urinal cake in your car. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. We're far away from throwing buckets of ice into the trough at the White River Amphitheater.
Oh, man. Yeah. Or that dive bar, what is it, Marco Polo, where they always have the ice. And you know which one. The one with the karaoke. Yeah,
I have never been to a restaurant or a bar. I guess restaurants don't do it, but I've never been to a bar that does the ice thing. I've heard about it.
Could you imagine you enjoy a fine meal, a succulent
Cheesecake Factory,
a succulent Chinese meal, and you go in and it's just a trough, and the little fella just fills it with Home Depot orange buckets full of ice.
Sir, no place where you fill it with ice, you're going to have a little feller.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. I just got one last one from the hard times. Bare naked ladies threaten to release one more song unless tariffs from Canada are lifted. They've given us an ultimatum.
Yes.
They've given us 1 week.
If only I had $1 million. Very good.
Is that
Zach.
another song?
Oh, dear.
They have 2 songs?
Huh? If I had $1 million. No? Nothing?
No.
Right. No, not at all. Okay.
Sorry, friend.
Sorry, Hoffman loves the bare naked ladies.
I really don't.
That.
I really don't. In the
Who
90s,
doesn't?
you couldn't get away from them, though. That was the problem. They were everywhere.
Glad I wasn't there.
Well, and then they returned into the 2000s with that abysmal television program.
They had a program?
Well, they themselves don't, but
didn't.
they do the theme song for the Big Bang Theory.
That's them.
That's them.
The whole universe.
And
is
that's
yeah, exactly.
Therefore, scarring generations.
I'd rather put a urinal cake in my car.
Young Zach, thank you so much. Don't forget, you can catch Zach on the morning ride every single weekday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Everybody have a great weekend. When we come back, lots more to discuss, including the latest from Washington, D.C., Washington State, and so much more. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
I love women. Bye.
Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless. Streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your last chance to win 2 tickets to see The Who at Climate Pledge Arena. But before we get to any of that, you know a discussion I'm kind of tired of having? Is when I mention to people who are on a different political side of the aisle about something with Joe Biden, they go, what does it matter anymore? That maybe triggers me because I think of Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, maybe. And I, what does it matter anyway? The Americans are dead, right? It matters because there's so many unresolved questions. The world was on fire the last 4 years. On fire. Are there plenty of things that were ignored by both administrations? Absolutely. For example, how did terrorists manage to get foothold in all our college campuses over the last 20 plus years? This really started after I left college. So let's see, when did I leave college? 2003-ish. This kind of stuff really started after that. Some of you may say it was there long beforehand, but no, the terrorist stuff really started around then. But now, you're seeing the world was on fire for 4 years. You're seeing it getting better. You're seeing it healing, but there's still so much damage. The reason I want to know who was actually running the show is because things really seem to blow up literally and figuratively over the last 4 years. While Joe Biden was president, you had October 7th. And October 7th happened because Joe Biden gave billions of dollars to Iran. Who actually gave the billions of dollars to Iran? Was it the auto pen? Somebody's using the auto pen. The auto pen isn't Clippy from Microsoft. It's not a reincarnation of Clippy going around just randomly signing documents. That's not what it is. Somebody's using the auto pen. Who was forging the president's signature? Because isn't that a coup? You know how bad things are? So Colombia has been through, 3, 4 presidents or something at this point? Something like that? Now they're up to their 3rd, 4th, I forget. Claire Shipman is the new president of Colombia. She is the one who actually had the students arrested not too long ago for taking over the library at the building. Young Zach was out at the Columbia graduation this week, and during the president's speech, here's what happened. They all started booing her.
Good morning, class of 2025. I know that many of you feel some amount of frustration with me, and I know you feel it with the administration.
So let me make sure I got this right. They're booing her at the graduation because we played the clip of her talking and how liberal it was coming from the equity place and the equality and everybody should be equal. You remember all that? And we said, wow, you can't make the argument against terrorism from the liberal angle. They're mad at her because she finally had the rioters arrested on campus. Rioters who previously imprisoned, held hostage, /kidnapped, /held against their will a whole bunch of Hispanic janitors who are destroying the campus, who are bullying students. And you're booing the person who finally did something about it? Well, we know why, because the indoctrination is deep at the school. They're chanting Free Mahmoud for the terrorist, Mahmoud Khalil. How did we lose our campuses? How did we lose them? How did we lose our government? How did we get on the side of other governments before our own? How did we get on the side of other countries before our own? During a graduation ceremony this week at the U of M, Governor Tim Walz decided that would be a good opportunity to demonize ICE.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared.
First of all, you're a doof and a goon. You can't even say the word gazpacho. Oh, no, wait, it's not gazpacho, it's Gestapo. So you're comparing them to the SS? You're comparing them to the Nazis? This guy was a minute away from being vice president of the United States, and that's how he talks about our federal law enforcement agents. who are rounding up child molesters, child murderers, rapists. That's how he's talking about them. You want to know how we lost the country? We lost an entire political party. The left does not care about the best interests of the United States. They seem to care about bringing down the United States. A clip, I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to have Mike rip it. Apparently, Pramila Jayapal earlier today did this whole speech. Here's basically a transcript of what she said. Donald Trump has been lying to you. He said his immigration crackdowns would only go after the worst of the worst, but he's deporting people with legal status and even U.S. citizen children with cancer. Hands off our immigrant families. We won't back down. Funny, I went to look at who ICE deported today from Seattle. Ready for this one? According to ICE Seattle, Oscar Javier Escato Cruz, 33. A citizen of Honduras ordered removed from the U.S. in 2011 is also facing local charges to include sexual misconduct with a minor and domestic violent assault. He was arrested on May 10th. This is who you want to keep in the U.S.? This is what you want to do? Who is actually running the show? Because it seemed like anybody with their own agenda were the ones running the show, whatever their agenda was. Peter Ducey was kind of curious about this as well.
And President Trump says that he basically thinks unelected Biden staffers concealed his decline so that they could use the levers of power for their own personal gain.
Well, look, that's not just the president thinking that, Peter. There's a new book out. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. Again, a little bit too late because the American people knew the truth on this from the very beginning. And there were reporters in this room, including some from your network, Peter, I'll give you a little bit of credit here, who have said that clearly Joe Biden's staffers were engaging in this cover-up. So this is common sense. This isn't the president making it up. These are facts that are now finally being revealed.
As I mentioned yesterday, I caved and I bought the Jake Tapper book. I actually bought it because of Pramila Jayapal. When I heard that Jayapal story was in there, I'm thinking to myself, what other stories about Seattle or Washington officials are in this book? Now, mind you, it's Jake Tapper. You have to take everything with a grain of salt, but that Pramila Jayapal story about her texting with Team Biden during that meeting that Biden had over Zoom with the Congressional Progressive Caucus after the disastrous Biden-Trump debate, where he was yelling at them, and she texted them and said, hey, tell him to calm down. They slipped him a note that said calm down, and he read it to the room. He read the note to the room about them telling him, sir, you're coming off as aggressive. He read that. So I want to know what other stories are in there, because we know Joe Biden, right? What did he do? Applause. Pause, repeat the line, right? He would do that all the time, which is beyond crazy. Who was running the auto pen? Who was running the government? Because it does seem like it was unelected staffers.
The president can declassify anything that he wants. Has he looked to see if there are any records here that would contradict what we've been told about Joe Biden's decline?
He has not directed anyone, to my knowledge, to look into that, but surely I can ask him if he intends to. I think the president has spoken on this pretty extensively, and I have spoken about it extensively from this podium as well, how it was truly one of the worst political scandals this country has ever seen, that the previous administration covered up the decline in the former president's mental and physical ability. And it's now all coming out, but the American people knew the truth, and that's one of the many reasons why President Trump won the election on November 5th.
And President Trump says that he basically thinks unelected Biden staffers concealed his decline so that they could use the levers of power for their own personal gain.
And we're back to where we started, which is exactly right. So the question is, are we going to find this out? And I hope we find this out, because I want to know who to hold responsible. I want to know not just everybody who was covering it up, because at this point, we know who was covering it up. Anybody who had anything to do with Joe Biden or the Democrat Party was covering this up. Pramila Jayapal, she knew that Joe Biden was reading notes, and then she gives this whole nonsense statement afterwards. Oh, it was great. It was productive. It was wonderful. You know who else did that? Do you remember one of the meetings after the disastrous debate? Do you remember a few governors went to the White House and they had a meeting with Joe Biden? They came out afterwards to talk about how great he was and how prepared he was to take on the Republicans. Do you remember who those governors were? One was Kathy Hochul, and one was Tim Walz. That's right. Tim Walz was one of those governors before Joe Biden dropped out, before Kamala Harris went in there, and Tim Walz was up there. That's right, it was Tim Walz. So this is a guy who participated in the cover-up. Remind you, something else that's fascinating to me is how bonkers crazy the left is going. Because the Trump administration is saying, hey, welfare money, SNAP money, should not be spent on junk food. You know, that's a pretty reasonable request, by the way. When I was in Israel for the year, I never drank water. The water there is filtered differently than our water, shall we say. I never really got used to it. I just drank soda all the time. Do you think that was healthy for me, an entire year just drinking? So literally, I think I drank chocolate milk and soda for an entire year. That is all I had. And yet we wonder why the kids in our country aren't healthy when you're on food stamps and you're allowed to buy junk food with it. So the Make America Healthy Again group got together the other day. President Trump introduced some of the findings.
4 months ago, I created the Presidential Commission to Make America Healthy Again, and today the commission officially delivers its first report on childhood health. Here are just some of the alarming findings, and they really are alarming. It's unbelievable, terrible. More than 40% of American children now have at least one chronic health condition. Since the 1970s, rates of childhood cancer have soared in many cases by nearly 50%, 50%. Well, in the 1960s, less than 5% of the children were obese. Now over 20% are obese. A few decades ago, think of this one. This is, to me, the one that gets me every time, and it seems to be getting worse. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today, it's 1 in 31. Last time I heard the number is 1 in 34, right? Now it's 1 in 31. There's something wrong, and we will not stop until we defeat the chronic disease epidemic in America. We're going to get it done. For the first time ever, this report examines some of the root causes that many believe are making our children sicker and our population sicker, I guess. It just doesn't stop with the children. It's our population also, such as the ultra-processed foods, over-medicalization and over-prescription and widespread exposure to potentially toxic chemicals. Unlike other administrations, we will not be silenced or intimidated by the corporate lobbyists or special interests. And I want this group to do what they have to do. We have to spell it out. In some cases, it won't be nice or it won't be pretty, but we have to do it. When you hear 10,000, it was 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31 for autism. I think that's just a terrible thing. It has to be something on the outside, has to be artificially induced, has to be. And will not allow our public health system to be captured by the very industries it's supposed to oversee. So we're demanding the answers. The public is demanding the answers, and that's why we're here.
You know, I'm very blessed that my kids don't have severe problems or learning disabilities or any of this kind of stuff. I'm very, very blessed. One of my kids had some stomach issues growing up, and we tried everything, and it turned out once we got the kid a healthier diet, wouldn't you know, it got a lot better. Got a lot better. There's a lot of other things I had to do too, but it wasn't medication that fixed anything. It was just eating a healthier diet. The garbage that is in our food. And by the way, less calories doesn't mean good calories. The junk that you're putting in your body. Look, I know the junk I put in my body. I recognize that I am not the healthiest guy, and I should probably do something about that. Secretary Rawlings was addressing the junk food issue.
The second thing is that you mentioned, sir, in your remarks that we are on track to sign multiples of SNAP waivers to get junk food and sugary drinks out of our food stamp system. And I am so proud. I am so proud to announce that on Monday, I was in Nebraska with Governor Pillen, where we signed the first one. An hour ago, I signed the second one for Governor Braun in Indiana. He may not even know that. I've got it right here, sir. I also signed the third one, Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa, about an hour ago. With a half a dozen more coming down the line. And, sir, that has never happened before. Under Republican or Democrat administrations, we have never made that happen before. So I am so proud and so grateful for your leadership.
Morrissey here, who was the first one to apply from West Virginia.
Oh, Governor Morrissey.
I have a question. Are we afraid of Pepsi? Are we afraid of Frito-Lay? What are we afraid of? Doritos? I know they're all owned by Pepsi. What are we really afraid of here? We all know it's junk food. We call it junk food. We all know it's not great for you, and yet, all right, kids got to go to school. All right, let's get them an apple, and let's get them a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and throw in some cookies. Throw in some make sure they have a little dessert. That's how we think in this country. That's what we do. Are we on track to getting these kids in a better place? You know, we should have cared this much about the President of the United States' health, or at least the people who were running the auto pen should have cared about that, and maybe Joe Biden wouldn't be in the place he's at right now. Just a thought there, guys. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from our friend Transit Joe. Transit Joe, what's up, man?
What's up is I really wish you didn't take pot shots at our great former president, Joe Biden.
I'm not taking pot shots at him. I'm taking pot shots at he clearly was not with us. I want to know, and you should too, as a person who likes Joe Biden, Transit Joe, you should want to know who did this to him. You should be mad at those people. I'm mad at those people.
I'm a little frustrated that President Biden didn't drop out earlier and allow for a free and open primary. I'll give you that.
Okay.
But, I called to wish everyone at KVI a meaningful Memorial Day weekend, and you know, I'm definitely going to catch the podcast of today. But I really wonder, you know, how long before we have another assassination of a Jewish leader? And is it going to be Seattle? Because I sure haven't heard Jermaine Salahay or Bruce Harrell or Bob Ferguson condemn anti-Semitism.
No, you're not going to hear them say it. You know why? Because their base are the ones who support it. And it is a little scary when you think you know how many phone calls I've gotten? Are you safe? Are you protected? Do you have security? Yes, 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 and yes. And I've been doing this for a long time. But you know how many people are worried about this kind of stuff? I mean, the amount of security we have coming to the synagogues after what happened this week is more than we usually have, and we usually have an insane amount. But that's the thing, is that where's Bruce Harrell? MIA. Haven't heard anything from him, and the synagogues are in his district. Not just that, we're near his house. Not a thing, not one word. Nothing from King County Council, nothing from Seattle City Council, nothing from any of these guys. It's sad, it's pathetic. It's a little scary, too. The worst take I saw on social media was that, oh, it's too bad, and this was a Jewish person who wrote this, that the Jews are talking about arming themselves rather than banning guns. You know what? One of the first things the Nazis did was ban guns? And how'd that work out? Yeah. Of course we should be talking about arming ourselves to keep all ourselves safe. Just like, Joe, I'm sure you want to make sure that the things you care about are safe, which is why you want cops on transit, right?
Yes.
Exactly, because I know you support the police, because that makes sense. Joe, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to mention something very quickly. I'm going to tag you on X. But Jared Neuenhuis of Bellevue gave a really great statement about what has happened the past week.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, the deputy mayor of Bellevue, friend of the show, he did give an excellent statement. And I know Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and the thing about him is that he means it. He doesn't do it to check a box or anything else like that. This is a guy who reaches out to me who says, what else can I do to help? This is a guy who goes around Bellevue taking down anti-Semitic flyers that are plastered on phone poles. That's who he is. Joe, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, a former Biden official who you all know from Washington State is now trying to clean up her disastrous legacy, and I wonder if she's about to run for office. We'll tell you all about it when we come back, but first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast right now on The Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman. Just a reminder, the Ari Hoffman Show. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including 2 tickets to The Who. So you get to hear this song and all the other stuff. Yet another reason to always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI, left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Do you guys remember the name Susie Levine, the former head of Washington's unemployment division?
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Do you remember that Susie Levine lost, what was it, $650 million, $1 billion out of our unemployment fund to Nigerian scammers? Because she opened the email that said, "I'm a Nigerian prince, and you've inherited $50 million. Is that how it happened? Do you remember that absolute disaster? Well, she put up an article on LinkedIn. Somebody sent this to me because, okay, I post stuff on LinkedIn. I never look at LinkedIn. It's not my forum. I mean, I'm there. I'll post some stuff because people have told me, "Hey, Ari, I like reading your stuff on LinkedIn." Fine. So I put the stuff up there. But somebody sent me to this LinkedIn article where she's trying to rewrite her own failed history. So she writes this article, learning from the massive fraud attack 5 years ago. Susie Levine, former commissioner of Washington State Unemployment Security Department and former Biden administration official, attempts to rewrite her history of failure that allowed Nigerian scammers to defraud $1 billion from Washington State's unemployment department during the pandemic. Though she presented herself as a decisive leader navigating an unprecedented crisis, the truth, backed by state audits and news reports, paints a very different picture. The 2020 unemployment fraud scandal wasn't just a product of external forces. It was worsened by internal mismanagement, ignored warnings, and delayed responses under Levine. During her tenure from July 2018 to February 2021, Washington's ESD became the primary victim of one of the largest unemployment fraud operations in the U.S. history. A Nigerian cyber criminal group known as Scattered Canary used stolen identities to file tens of thousands of fraudulent unemployment claims during the COVID-19 pandemic. Washington was one of the first states to implement enhanced unemployment benefits under the CARES Act, including a $600 per week federal supplement. Combined with the state's high maximum weekly benefit, up to $790, Washington became a particularly lucrative target. Initial estimates of the damage ran as high as $1 billion, though revised figures later placed a loss between $550 million and $650 million. By June 2020, only around $333 million to $357 million had actually been recovered. Levine insists the agency was never hacked and shifts blame to external data breaches like Equifax. While it's true that identity theft enabled the fraud, this narrative obscures the ESD's initial failures. A Washington state audit explicitly found inadequate controls at ESD and cited a critical software flaw that allowed the claims to be paid before fraud checks were completed, a flaw that persisted for nearly a year. Even 59 ESD employees' identities were used to submit fraudulent claims. The problem wasn't just outsiders, it was gross mismanagement on the inside. In her article, Levine glosses over the human cost of her agency's actions. As ESD scrambled to recover from the fraud, legitimate claimants were left waiting weeks or even months for badly needed benefits. In May of 2020, the agency froze payments entirely to stop further fraud, creating enormous financial hardship during a public health emergency. Thousands of struggling Washingtonians were effectively punished for ESD's failures. Levine touts a drop in fraudulent claims from 15% to 0.02% within 2 months as proof of her swift leadership. This statistic, lacking context, masks the fact that fraud surged under her watch precisely because the agency was unprepared. The floodgates opened when ESD, under pressure from Governor Inslee and with Levine's approval, bypassed the standard 1-week waiting period for claims, eliminating a crucial layer of fraud prevention. While countermeasures were eventually introduced, the initial damage was already done and massive. In her article, Levine claims the state recovered more than $420 million, a figure she uses to frame the outcome as a success. The number inflates the actual recovery, which the Seattle Times and state audit show stood closer to $357 million, with little additional recovery after June of 2020. Her claim misleads the public by exaggerating the effectiveness of the agency's response and minimizing the real fiscal damage. After presiding over a record-breaking fraud scandal, Levine was appointed to a high-ranking position in the Biden administration as interim Assistant Secretary of Employment and Training Administration. Critics rightfully called this a political reward rather than a merit-based advancement, pointing to her background as a Democratic fundraiser and a major donor to Governor Jay Inslee. The appearance of political favoritism only deepened public frustration over the lack of accountability. She left the position shortly after being appointed. A December 2020 audit cataloged a string of missteps by the agency and noted significant constraints that Levine placed on investigators, which hindered efforts to stem the fraud. So wait a minute. She didn't even want them investigating what went wrong. Unbelievable. Lawmakers, including State Senator Ann Rivers, called for her resignation, citing the disaster as evidence of failed leadership. On platforms like X, public outrage erupted over the state's inability to hold anyone accountable for hundreds of millions of dollars in lost taxpayer money. Levine and her agency failed at one of its most fundamental tasks, safeguarding public funds during a national emergency. Now she's trying to reframe the scandal as a tale of effective crisis management, which leaves me wondering, is she running for office? Does she plan to run for office? Or is she just worried about her failed legacy? We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from my good friend, Alma. Alma, my darling, it has been so long. How are you?
Life. Don't ask me about life. You know what, Ari, I was thinking as I was riding along. This is sad that people on Medicare, I'm not on Medicaid, but I have people that I know, older people. It's so dirty how they're trying to do these people. There are babies on Medicare.
Whoa, hang on, Alma. Hang on, Alma. I want to clear up some things because we discussed this earlier in the show. Maybe you didn't hear it, okay? They're not kicking people off Medicaid the way some people are claiming they're doing. What they are saying is that the people who shouldn't be on Medicaid should be off Medicaid because you and I both know the system is going bankrupt. And I think you and I would both agree there's fraud in the system, right?
You can say that, but then you take one bad fly and make all the rest of them, kill all the rest of the good ones. That's not always necessarily true. I know a lot of people that's on Medicaid and food stamps that need it. I'm an elderly person. God so blessed me till I have a decent income until I don't have to beg. But if they start messing with Medicare,
Medicare, Alma, Medicare is off the table. Medicare is not being touched. Donald Trump has even said he's not touching it. With Medicaid, however, I don't think your friends need to worry because if your friends are legitimately on it, just the other day I was talking about people who used to work for me who used to be asked to be paid in cash because they wanted to still get their benefits. Those are the people they're talking about. Alma, wishing you a very wonderful weekend because I got to run to commercial break.
I need to finish talking.
I gotta go, Alma. I need people to pay for the show. Yeah.
All right.
All right. You take care, Alma. You have a wonderful weekend. When we come back, our friend Lars Larson will be unleashed. Catch us up on some stories out of Portland you may not have heard, and one fun one out of Seattle. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
KVI and the Ari Hoffman Show.
I want you to get up now.
Taking off the gloves.
I want you to get mad.
Telling it like it is.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Welcoming Lars, Unleashed.
Well, it's Friday, and that means we get to unleash our friend Lars Larson, whose show you can catch every single weekday from 12 to 3 right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Lars, I hear there's a story happening in Seattle Public Schools that I didn't even know was going on. Tell us about it.
Well, here's the question you should ask yourself. Does someone have to get shot and killed at my kid's school to be able to get a cop there?
Well, the question we should ask is how many people need to get shot and killed in Seattle Public Schools before we get a cop
One
there?
per school, I think, because the Seattle Public Schools 5 years ago give the cops the bum's rush, say, we don't want you here. And why? Because of something that happened in Minneapolis involving a convicted criminal, drug abuser, drug addict, high on drugs, and he died, George Floyd. And you say, okay, so we're going to get rid of all the cops in all the schools. And then and all of us argued against it. I argued against it. I said we protect every important institution in the country with armed personnel. We protect military bases and Super Bowls. We protect banks and shopping malls. We protect them by having men and women armed with guns. Except the one institution we're told is the most important thing we do, which is education. In that case, they decided we are going to pull all the cops out of all the schools in Seattle. And then last year at Garfield High, which, by the way, is a predominantly white school, not a predominantly black school. I looked up the numbers today. They say we are now going to put one cop there. Why? Because one kid, a teenager, sadly, was shot and killed at Garfield last year. So that made me wonder, and I say it's a good idea. I'm glad they're putting a cop there. By the way, they're also telling the cop, they say, we'll probably make the cop stay outside most of the time because the kids aren't comfortable with the cop in the school. I would say that's a failure of education right away. If you have not educated kids, not to trust everything the government does, but to say, when you see the cops, they're good. Now, do we occasionally have bad cops? Sure. We occasionally have bad politicians, cops, actors, and the whole nine yards. But if the kids in your school believe that the police are an evil influence, you have failed to educate them properly. But now to say we're going to have one cop at the school because one kid got shot, does that mean somebody has to get shot at every Seattle public school to be able to get at least a little bit of armed security at public schools?
Now, that's absolutely crazy. And here's something else, just to put this in perspective for a minute. So, Lars, when Star Wars came out, kids were apparently scared of firefighters in all their gear because they thought it was Darth Vader coming for them. So they actually did a whole campaign that's where you get the firefighters coming to school and showing the kids the masks so you know that they're friendly. That was a big initiative that came out of that, actually, because of Star Wars. So the thing here is, as I say all the time, we grew up with cops in the building and security guards in the building. They're who we go to. In the D.C. shooting just the other day, the people who arrested the guy were the security guards they had for the Jewish event, not the cops. My thing is we should have more cops in these schools, and we should bring them out there. But the Seattle public schools, let's not forget, when they had violence on these school grounds, what did they do? They brought back private security. So armed private security is better than the police officers, even though they have less regulations and less restrictions, which is absolutely crazy. And let's not forget, Garfield High School had another shooting before this kid was killed, and they had that illegal immigrant homeless encampment take over their tennis courts. So by my math, they had 2 people shot and illegal immigrant invasion before they got a cop back on campus.
No, and I'll tell you, on my 5 visits to Jerusalem, I got used to it. I liked it. I liked seeing it. I don't know about the other people who were with me. I don't remember their reactions. But outside every grocery store, there was a guy, it was almost always a guy, sitting in a lawn chair in front of the grocery store with a fully automatic weapon in his lap. And it did 2 or 3 things. Number one, if there's trouble outside that store, then he's there. If there's somebody who tries to come inside that store to do evil, he's there. And if there's trouble behind him, well, it probably means he hasn't cleared the store properly, because I would imagine the guy sits down in the chair, says, I've cleared this building, I'm out front, I'm ready to meet any threat that comes to this place. And I thought it was incredibly reassuring. In the same, and people say, well, if you see a cop with a gun, that's not reassuring. Sure, it is. In the same way that when I put a seatbelt on, if I look around the car before I take off with people in my car, I look and say, everybody belted up? Yeah. That reassures me that I have the things to prevent bad things from happening as much as you can when you're driving down the highway.
It's absolutely crazy to me that we're 5 years later, all the violence, let's not forget Broadview Thompson K through 8. They had that violent homeless encampment that was there for a year and a half before it finally got cleared. And why did it finally get cleared? Because there was a shooting there in the middle of the night and they found bullets on the playground. And they said enough is enough. Meanwhile, they had assaults, they had rapes, they had all these other things going on that encampment. And their solution was to put up black tarps so that way the kids couldn't see it through the fence. I mean, this is absolutely crazy, but on par for Seattle Public Schools. I mean, Lars, at this point, even if somebody dies, they're not likely to change their policies.
No, except in this case. And when do they respond? The next day, the next week, the next month? No, the next year. It's really, we have people running big public institutions and vulnerable public institutions who don't seem to have the common sense that anybody else would have. To say, if you have threats at schools, you meet them by being prepared for them ahead of time, not a year later.
Yeah, exactly. And yet they don't want to address it at all because, for whatever reason, they think cops are bad for their progressive agenda.
And they communicate that to the kids by saying, well, we're going to have a cop, but he'll be outside. We won't let him come inside the building. What message are you communicating to the kids by doing that? Because the kids aren't stupid. These are high school kids. Do you think they don't see it? If your mom and dad said, well, Johnny can come over to the house, but don't let him come inside. He'll wait for you outside. If you had some sketchy friend, I don't know if you had any sketchy friends when you were a kid.
I have lots of sketchy friends still.
Well, I still do too. But if your mom and dad said he's allowed to come over and pick you up in front of the house, but he doesn't come inside, your mom and dad would be presenting a message to you.
Exactly. So what message are they presenting with all this insanity? Lars Larson, you can catch his show every single weekday from 12 to 3 right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Lars, have a wonderful weekend, my friend.
And you as well, Ari.
Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news giveaway, your good news headlines, your chance to win a $50 gift card, plus so much more. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to our good news giveaway, got the most entertaining good news headline we have seen in a while. Now, the Indy 500 is this weekend, but after one of the practice sessions, they had the Weenie 500. What is that? They raced the 6 Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, there's more than one of those suckers? Yes, there are 6 of them that we know of, or 6 of them that raced today, which shows that since they are all exactly identical, it's not the size, it's how you use it. So the Wienermobiles were racing around the Indy 500. Thank you. Racing around the Indy 500 track. And the video and audio of the finale of this race is amazing that Mike pulled it for the show today.
Yeah, this is of the final lap. Would you be interested in legislation about the different vehicles that were involved? Because it was a 6 Wienermobile race, but I don't know if you caught this or not, but like each one was representative of a different region of the country and the signature hot dog of that region. So the competitors were the Shy Dog representing the Midwest. A proper Chicago dog includes an all-beef hot dog and a poppy seed bun. It's topped with relish, onion, tomato, and a dill pickle spear, pickled sport peppers, and celery salt. That's a Chicago dog. The New York dog from the East, Tasty's New York City dog recipe has sauerkraut, spicy mustard, and onions. The Slaw Dog, representing the Southeast, is a spicy Southern Kitchen's Carolina-style slaw hot dog recipe. Calls for mustard, homemade chili, and coleslaw. This is from an outlet called Indy Star, by the way. The Sonoran Dog from the Southwest is Epicurious, has tips for making this one, including how to cook them in wrapped bacon and what toppings to include, including avocado, pico de gallo, pinto beans, pickled jalapenos, and even potato chips. The Chili Dog, representing the South, this one's easy. Just add chili and maybe some shredded cheese and diced onions. And from right here in the Northwest, the Seattle Dog. All recipes call it a quote-unquote Seattle cream cheese dog. It has sweet onions, cream cheese, sauerkraut, and brown mustard. It has none of those things. A true Seattle Dog is cream cheese and grilled onions. That's it. You want to put more stuff on there, that's fine, but sauerkraut, brown mustard... Actually, I put that stuff on there. What am I talking about? But the base starts with just cream cheese. Anyway, that is the field of competition as we go into the final lap.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing. They all look identical, so they're all representing those hot dogs. They're not covered in these things. They're Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles.
Well, they have numbers and flags and
they got all that
stuff
stuff on them. But, yeah, here you go.
Hot on their tail. Rounding 3 and into 4.
This certainly is not over. We saw it last lap, guys. There's plenty of time for a late pass here off of the last corner. No ifs, ands, or buns about it. This one is going to go down to the line.
Our pole sitter, Cheat Dog, has a 2 to 3 bun advantage over the car behind.
Sunday will be the 109th running of the Indy 500, but the first Weenie 500. And if you know one thing about Indy on the last lap, it's a dog-eat-dog world as they round the track for the final time.
Chidog still in the lead.
But looks like maybe a great run off of turn 2 here. Oh, I think we might be having a race to the line.
Mustard Maddie closing with the Slaw Dog. Could she top off the Weenie 500 with a late pass on the Chidog? Less than a quarter mile to go at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the inaugural Weenie 500.
These hot dogs are hot rodding it down the front straight, T-Bell. They're coming at us now.
Maxed out at a whopping 60 miles an hour. Townsend.
They're closing. Second place is closing with the run.
Can the fans cheer them across the line? It's going to be close.
They're making the move. Slaw Dog making the move off the inside on the run to the yard of bricks and over the line. It looks like it's going to be the Slaw Dog by a nose.
Now, if you've ever seen a Wienermobile pass another one,
500
this
history,
was nuts.
It was crazy. It was a photo finish type win there. Actually, it wasn't. It was a clear win, but passed it right at the finish line.
It was awesome. You know what else is awesome? Your chance to win fantabulous prizes. Today, we're giving away a $50 Daniels Broiler gift card, 7 steps to a successful retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, and 2 tickets to the Who at Climate Pledge Arena on September 25th. Phone lines are open now. All you have to do is be caller number 10. That's caller number 10 at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Caller number 10 wins a $50 Daniels Broiler gift card, 7 steps to a successful retirement, and 2 tickets to the Who at Climate Pledge Arena. We'll be back on Tuesday with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and, of course, more giveaways. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.